and then I will get the okay. In 10 seconds, we'll be live.
Okay.
And then I'll go to for Seaside to see if I can find it. If okay, we're live. Okay. 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 Good afternoon to all of you in Thailand and also in Myanmar and also across Southeast Asia. I have a distinct pleasure of having this conversation with my dear colleague and Thai dissident brother, Professor Pavin, who is in Kyoto. That we will not spend more than 40 minutes because Pavin has a big lecture coming up after this event with me. So without further ado, let me give the floor to Pavin, who will present an update about what is happening in Thai democracy movement.
Thank you, Sani. We did talk about the Thai situation last time, so I would like to take this opportunity to update you what has happened in Thailand. Since last time, we have noticed that the government has continued to harass the Thai protesters, not only arresting them but also pressing less majestic charges against them. I cannot recall how many people have been arrested under less majestic, but I think it might be as close as 100 people. Basically, right now, all the core protest leaders have been arrested. And then, and this is something that, in turn, it has become counterproductive because the more that the government have done this to the protester, it sort of motivated the people to come out on the street even more. There's two events in the past few weeks. One is basically a protest organized by a new movement called Redem, basically re-democracy. So they call themselves briefly Redem. But the problem with Redem is that there's no figurehead for the movement. So that's why the movement tend to be sort of sporadic and most of the time out of control, including provoking the state to respond to them violently. And indeed, it ended in violence. So we started to see the government using a tear gas and also rubber bullet. People might think that this is nothing as near as what happened in Myanmar, right? But in the Thai context, this is also a new development in Thailand too. The other development is the return of the sort of Rasadon movement. Rasadon is basically a movement that had sort of born out of a student at Thammasat University. And if you observe Thailand long enough, Thammasat University sort of left this pro-democracy movement. And they came out on the 24th of March, just basically 2 days ago. I was very pleased with this movement because once again, we start to see more and more people coming out to support the Thammasat movement. I like to think that it was very successful and they managed to bring in sort of new generation of leader. So especially this particular young, brave woman who went on the stage and then emphasizing the importance for the monarchy reform, right? And immediately after that, she has been charged with lèse majesté because of her speech. She had done something earlier. If you remember, I think it's about October or November last year, she was among the people who gathered in front of the German embassy in Bangkok, calling for the German government to ban King Vajiralongkorn from entering the country. So I think she's started to gain a lot of popular support. That's why the government immediately targeted her. So I would like to end this update by saying that I like to think that this could become a new turn for the Thai protest because after many protest leaders were arrested, you started to see the fading of the protest movement. But now it started to come back again, and I like to think that partly it was driven by what happened in Myanmar. So later on, after Sani talk about situation in Myanmar, we can come back to talk about a kind of cross-border alliance. What at the people level could do in order to give each other support, in order to sort of further promote. Now we like to say multi-alliance. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavin. That's my colleague and fellow co-founder of the Forces of Renewal, Southeast Asia. We are a cross-national, cross-boundary solidarity network of concerned scholars and rights activists from across Southeast Asia, and also those with ties to Southeast Asia scattered across Europe and other places. And so, yes. Pavin, I must acknowledge, the gratitude and appreciation that a lot of Burmese dissidents, both prominent ones and also those on the streets, feel toward the Thai democracy movement and dissidents and Democrats. And as you know, a lot of Thai dissidents, refugees and exiles have come out to support Burmese democracy protesters in front of embassies in Europe and US and other places, Thai students. And so, of course, and also, that's just a appreciation and gratitude. And also, last year, the whole year, your country people, particularly the young high school and university students, have rocked the entire kingdom of Thailand. Yeah, and but I had earlier a long conversation with Ajahn Tongchai, who was one of the leading dissidents and continued to be a leading voice for Thai democracy movement from Thammasat University from 1976, and so we are actually very inspired by what the Thai democracy movement have accomplished, which is conscientize or forge a new type of consciousness among the Thai society, particularly younger generations, compared with their older generation. They look at fundamental questions. They ask questions about the system in Thailand, and also, of course, like we draw on the Hong Kong protest movement and Taiwan's progressive social movements like legalization of same-sex marriage. And so I want to emphasize this inspirational or ideological connections among what you just mentioned, the milk tea alliance that is expanding. And just about a week or so ago, as you may have read it, Thai military was reportedly supplying rice to the Burmese military, that was caught without much supply, to stay on in the Karen National Liberation Army Brigade 5 area across from the Thai borders along the Salween or boundary rivers. And so, yeah, I mean, you specialize in Thai-Myanmar relations for your PhD, and you know that the Thai-Myanmar relations were rocky in the after the Burmese independence, but now we are seeing a different type of relations where two murderous militaries work closely against respective societies, particularly those clamoring for democratization and human rights. Yeah, and then so in the 80s and 90s. I know for a fact, because I heard it straight from the horse's mouth, the All Burma Students Democratic Front and the Karen National Union were given sanctuary, and also were allowed to bring in weapons or even sold weapons, to fight the Burmese, because the ideological and institutional orientation of Thai military was against the Burmese, among the external enemies. Now that has shifted, and we've got this, basically a criminal against humanity, Senior General Mae Aw Lai, and he's one of the favorite generals for the Thai generals, and even like the palace set, if you will, and then so So this is a huge reversal from the earlier, days of Thai-Myanmar relations post-colonial period after Second World War. Now we are seeing two basically murderous regimes collaborating against, respected peoples, and a bit, and so the I just want to make two very short points, and I'll turn the floor back over to you, Pavin. The what we are seeing in Burma is very similar to what Thai society is undergoing or has been undergoing. There is a radical awakening among the population that we do not have an external enemy from Thai kingdom. We do not have any other external enemies. And there is only one common enemy that has made life hellish for everyone, every religious, every ethnic community. So what we are seeing is this consciousness that triggers the embracing of, or the popular embrace of, even Rohingya people. I know, the Thai dissidents who are quietly supportive of Rohingyas' right to live, from the political parties as well as intellectuals, but they're a bit shy about supporting Rohingyas. I just want to send a message to them that it is okay to say that we support Rohingya these days, because the public in Burma itself openly re-embrace Rohingya as our own people. And so there is an inclusive new society emerging out of this like protest movement, and which is in the early days of a fully fledged revolution. And can you let me just hand the mic back to you and hear your thoughts on how our movements can work together. So when we have a situation where our oppressors are working together.
Well, I mean, it is quite ironic to think that we are talking about multi-alliance, basically the cooperation among pro-democracy, movement in both countries. When I said it's ironic, because you also see a kind of alliance at the state level between Thailand and Myanmar too. And exactly what you said about the flip-flopping of the Thai approach in working with the ethnic insurgencies before, and then now working with the junta in Myanmar. Exactly that was my main study, many years ago at SOAS. And I remember it very well that that seemed to show that the shift in the Thai policy is based on regime change in Thailand too. When we become more democratic, of course, we reach out to ethnic groups in Myanmar in order to supply them, as you said, both money and also weapon. I mean, there's a lot of cases of a lot of story that I have heard that, even among the leader of some ethnic group, they were well looked after. They even have nice apartment in Bangkok, in Sukhumvit area. But then once the regime sort of shifted, then you started to see the rapprochement between the states, the government between the two countries. And coming back to Min Aung Hlaing, this is also a big issue when you mentioned about the Thai supply of rice, to the regime amid, increasing international sanctions against the Myanmar government. This is so unacceptable, not just in the Thai domestic political context, but I mean, within ASEAN, we of course can talk about ASEAN a bit later, how, useless ASEAN has become vis-a-vis the issue in Myanmar and Thailand. But also, this is so embarrassing, in the international level as well, that Thailand has supported regime like that, at this point in time. Min Aung Hlaing was very close to the Thai junta. After 2014, Min Aung Hlaing was the first foreign guest coming to Thailand right after the coup and meeting with Prayut Chan-o-cha, who was the coup leader then. And he even said something so controversially. For example, that, you did the right thing, that you staged a coup. Myanmar went through that before in 1988, that we had to do what we had to do in order to stop, bloodshed. That was the term they used. So basically, coming to give legitimacy to the Thai coup. And we can go on and on talking about his relationship with, Prem Tinsulanon, who passed away a few years ago. So this kind of personal tie, uh, seem to point out the current policy of Thailand, because people back then in 2014 in the Thai government continue to be the same people right now in Thailand. So the policy toward Myanmar has not changed. So
Yeah.
this is something that we must condemn.
Yes.
Right.
I just want to point out specifically, you talk about ex-general and the Privy Councillor, Prem, right? And on behalf of the Thai kingdom, he awarded May Al Line, whom he called, my little son, right? And one general to the other, in the middle of international criminal investigation, where May Al Line will in due course be essentially issued an arrest warrant as a criminal against humanity. This is this is beyond imagination. Thai kingdom awarding a potential or very likely criminal against humanity highest honor, because this is an insult to the Thai public. Every Thai citizen should feel insulted that Thai kingdom is honoring. And the other one that you mentioned, ASEAN. Today our mutual friend, Titinam, Ajahn Titinam, published a scathing piece saying that the Myanmar poses the existential crisis to ASEAN. I mean, you are also a former diplomat working with the late, Foreign Minister Surin. Yeah. And so let's just move away from the fact that we established that the failure, or I would say repeated failure of ASEAN. We're not just talking about the current protest movement.
Yep.
We're talking about blocking of emergency aid to Cyclone Nargis victims in 2008. We're talking about genocide in 2016 and 17. ASEAN failed repeatedly, and now the ASEAN is failing. So let's put that aside. Can you share your thoughts on how our two movements, we are both organically involved with the different movement, and we, two of us also work together. How can we move forward to forge this, what we consider natural alliance, because Thai and Burmese public become value-driven societies, not just simply interest-driven, you see? And let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I think there's much to do. Okay, for example, Thai protesters helped organize protests among Myanmar residents in Thailand in front of the Myanmar embassy in Bangkok, and in fact, it just happened again. I think yesterday or the day before. So it happened very regularly. So I mean, at the minimum, I think we can build up a kind of alliance between Thai protesters and those Myanmar who already resided in Thailand. That is one thing. So we might have to talk in detail a little bit later that how we can come up with a kind of network. That is one thing. The other thing is that we might have to identify a key movement within Myanmar right now. So one, you can identify them. I know a lot of people in Thailand, especially those who go out on the street. I can just basically link them together. We can have a sort of ad hoc meeting on online on Zoom in order to share so many things, for example, best practices, to share also agenda, how we can move forward, to make sure that, regionalize the issue. Why we regionalize the issue is important, because then we can involve those in Hong Kong, those in Taiwan. To be honest, I have less hope.
Indonesia, Malaysia, the countries where they have had this massive flourishing of democratic struggles.
We have to make it not just issue among the two countries, but it has to be wider, region wide basically. And sorry when I did not mention Indonesia and Malaysia first. Instead, I mentioned Hong Kong and Taiwan, because frankly, Sunny, I have less and less hope for ASEAN, to be honest. But I think it's fair enough to involve the two countries you mentioned, maybe perhaps even to an extent the Philippines as well, despite Duterte. Right? I think once you make it a regional issue, I think it would attract more people. It become not just issue of the two countries, but it's an issue that everyone have to pay attention. So what I can say is basically building up network like that. And also maybe it has to be something more symbolic. For example, Thai protests now, we have to say something about Myanmar situation whenever they go on the street, on the stage, not just talking about the reform of the monarchy.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes it might not be portrayed through the speaking, but it has to be sort of symbol. So for example, it might be sort of Myanmar flag, something like that. That I think would be a good step to go forward. And
Yeah.
likewise, we would like to hear that, Myanmar protester, whenever they are, they would also mention about the Thai situation too. At least they should come out to condemn.
I totally agree. I think the key here is what bonds us together is as two democratic struggles is this shared values. I mean, okay, you're fighting within the network democratic or network democracy context, right? The palace and the corporate elite and the Thai military, right? And we have a different context that against which we are fighting. We are fighting against the essentially the regime that is becoming China's protectorate, put it this way, right? And and so. But despite the differences in the context and the systems against which our struggles are, fighting, but there is a common set of values that we share. We share respect for human rights. Yeah, we share the respect for the democratic will of the people. Yeah, so if the respect is there, there will be no coup, right? And obviously both Thai and Burmese militaries are deeply unpopular. I mean, they hardly have any legitimacy. That's why I also like what you said about regionalizing our issue, bringing in other democratic brothers and sisters from across the region beyond Southeast Asia, right? So although we call ourselves 4C, yeah, because that was our initial conception, but we are not confined to working within the region. We will work with any value communities across Asia. Yeah, we could even include like Indian farmers movement. We can make linkages, and what I want to say though is here, in fully agreement with you, but taking it to a slightly different direction. Because we have so many migrant workers in Thailand and across Southeast Asia, millions of Burmese, yeah, up to 3 or 4 million or even more. And so we should look at the interface between different labor movements, right? And also you mentioned young Thai women students taking podium and playing a very instrumental role in Thai politics. So we have a similar situation in Burma as well. We've got labor unions getting involved in the larger democratic movement, and we've got young progressive women leaders like one particular who's already connected with or a few connected with the Thai women's movement, like Tenzar Shunle Yi. She's been quoted quite often in the media, and there's another one who's in hiding, like one of the most fiery revolutionary women named Eat Tenzar Mao, and they're also progressive young university students. So if we could interface student, labor, woman, or feminist movement and farmers, movements and trade unions, I think it opens up a lot of areas where we can forge this alliance, going beyond symbolism that you mentioned.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, whichever opportunity is there, we should just go for it. I think we have to, building up on what you just said, I think there's 2 points here. One is to go out there and to try to produce something tangible, meaning that you go there, you protest, yeah, you just want to express how you feel and then to defend democracy, blah blah blah, and at the end you want a change in your government. The other one is something that you mentioned, and I like to take it further, something that we have to think in a long run, promoting democracy and human rights as a kind of value in Asia. I mean, I'm not talking about just Thailand and Myanmar. People talk so much in the past 2 decades about Asian value, but sadly, when they talk about Asian values, democracy and human rights are not included. So I think maybe this is something that we have to replan a kind of new ideology among the younger generation, apart from what we have to do on a daily basis for tangible output, right? But something that to inculcate new kind of concept of value of democracy and human rights. I know this might be a little bit too abstract, but nonetheless, I think it's very important.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we look at ASEAN, out of the 10 countries, and of course, like, if we go beyond ASEAN, we could include Timor-Leste, yeah, because they're also a democratic country. Why are they kept outside of ASEAN, right? Whereas, in fact, ASEAN only has 2 functioning democracies, Indonesia and Malaysia. Yeah, whatever their shortcomings domestically, but and also we've got, like, the higher income tier original ASEAN members, like, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand and Singapore. But Thailand is like completely a military junta with the palace backing. And so I support your call for spreading this democratic and pro-human rights value. ASEAN pays lip service. ASEAN has a human rights charter. Even if ASEAN adheres to its own charter, I think, like, we would not be in this mess, right? So what we are looking at is a regional bloc of authoritarian states, largely failing 540 or 550 million ASEAN or Southeast Asian people, right? And by judging from the fact that we have had the democratic uprisings in more than half the countries, like Philippines in 1986, and then followed by the Burmese, and of course, like, Thailand has in 1976, and so more than half of the ASEAN or Southeast Asian communities rise up for democracy and human rights. And they've still been denied, with the exception of 2 countries. And so how do we forge this people's alliance, regionalized, based on shared democratic values, not simply the states are paying lip service to human rights. And also ASEAN doesn't recognize the civil and political rights of people. I mean, like, it is utterly ridiculous. This is a Neanderthal organization that has absolutely no value in terms of people's struggles and hunger for freedom, democratization, and human rights.
Well, Sunny, I think it's happening anyway. For example, at the height of the Thai protests last year, Joshua Wong, came out to support. We really need something like that, because that is just something very substantial, at the same time something very symbolic, right? Yeah. You just can't say that, okay, people of Hong Kong support the Thai protest, but no, actually we have the front man coming out and said and did this, right? We are with Thai people. I think we need something like that, and that's why I said it's happening. I think this is a one way of spreading democracy as a new value of Asia, if Southeast Asia. The other one is that we managed to organize, Thai protests in Taipei. And, amazingly, a lot of Taiwanese people joining that protest. So again, this is another demonstration of cross-culture, a cross-border new kind of culture, promoting democracy. I think the challenge, though, because we don't have much time, I like to leave this as the last point. The challenge is that how we overcome obstacle, posed by the state. Because as much as we want to expand our network, the state also is in the process of expanding its own network. When I say this, because you started to see, and I just finished this paper, in fact, talking about illiberalism in Southeast Asia. You started to see illiberalism, in Southeast Asia. You started to see government like Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia coming together loosely, informally, not informal, loosely together with China. And I mean, it started to present it as, I call it a dark hole, in Southeast Asia. So that's why, it's remained a struggle for us as well, that as much as we want to expand our network, the government also is doing the same thing.
Yeah, on a log, I am completely with you, and China is emerging as the bastion of this illiberalism, right? And the all the Burmese called China the evil neighbor, yeah, because that it always sides with the. I mean, I think in your case, maybe the China's role may be less instrumental for Thai regime survival, but in the case of Burmese military, China is keeping the Burmese military alive, put it this way. But I want to get your final thoughts on the more mundane but extremely crucial question of safety of our dissidents who have to go into hiding, and how can people across Southeast Asia, yeah, including Myanmar and Malaysia and other countries, support the Thai and Burmese dissidents who need sanctuary and safety?
Well, I mean, Sunny, this issue is so close to my heart. In fact, I think you know how I feel as well, because we both are dissident, right? And we both cannot return home. So I really feel for them. And in the past few months, many people contacted me, especially those who felt that they became victim of the state and they tried to run away. So we have to use our available instrument, but sometimes it's not enough. We only have to pick up the phone and just talk to our friend across the border. Can you help? But again, it has to be done systematically. It's difficult at this point in time, as I said, because of the state turning more and more authoritarian, and because of that, we lost our friend. For example, I have to say it in Cambodia, for example. Yeah, so I think it's very difficult. What makes it difficult is because of the COVID pandemic that seal the border. So when you just think about crossing the border in itself during the COVID time, it's already very difficult. So my plea is that those who out there, whom you think you can keep helping hand, if you happen to have position in your government, maybe you might have to whisper in their ear that when it comes to helping out pro democracy, activists, human rights activists, something like that, you have to help them. You have to facilitate, and then at least serving as a stepping stone for these people to move to a better country. If you really can't provide them a kind of long-term stay for them, at least providing them as a good stepping stone, as a springboard for them to move to, say, Europe or the United States.
Yeah, like providing
Shelter.
Indonesians or Cambodians or like Malaysians or Burmese providing Thai dissidents who have to run a halfway house before they can get to a third country where they will resettle and continue or resume their democratic struggles from the diaspora. Right? Is that what you said?
Sunny, what we fear the most is that these people will deport those who run away back to their country. That is what we fear the most. And there's, I think, one or two cases for Malaysia. Just as we thought that we have hope for Malaysia to come and rescue us. But then there's such case, so that's why we are less confident these days. So whoever watching us right now, I think we have to come together and at least helping those who run away from the abusive regimes, from Thailand.
Especially like in societies like civil societies like Indonesia or Malaysia, where like a degree of democratic protection has been established, and so there are two other the value-driven movements, Thai movement and Burmese movement, they're coming up, and people risking their lives. I mean, like literally, and these movements deserve cross-border solidarity and support. Symbolically, morally, logistically, and then I would even say financially. Feed the dissidents who have to run away. Yeah. And so I know you have to go. And so any final thoughts before you?
Two small points, Sunny, to add up on what you said. Well, we like to think that we're confident. They find new homes somewhere else. So we can say for sure that we're confident that we would be able to help them. But what is so crucial is the first step. Once they get out of the country to neighboring country, that when we need help the most. So once again, I would like to make a plea here. Second point is that 4C is for that reason. among spreading, the idea of democracy, but we also want to do something like that. So people who are out there and want to be in the process of helping them, contact us for see. You know how to contact us. Just go to our website, right4c.co. So that's just my 2 small points.
Yeah, and finally, my own pitch here is that we are a cross-national network of dissidents, intellectuals, activists, and we welcome your input in the form of opinion, editorial pieces, analyses, personal reflections, creative writing, poetry, everything. And also we also welcome any form of organic collaboration with us. And as my colleague Professor Pavin said, we can be found easily forca.co, and then Pavin is the editor-in-chief, and so please get in touch with all of us. Thank you, Pavin, and have a great time at your lecture at Nanyang. Okay, bye, my friend.